There are roads I have always trusted. There are parts of the map that feel like home, the way a favorite sweater fits your shoulders. I did not expect to be betrayed by a highway, but betrayal is perhaps too moral a word. The road simply did what roads do. It kept its own terrible counsel. My name is Daniel Rowe. I live in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, but work takes me across the border into Minnesota and back again. For 10 years, I've driven the stretch of Highway 17 and US Route 61 that trace the edge of Lake Superior like a seam. It's the sort of trip that makes your coffee taste of pine, where radio signals shriek and die, and the only companion you have for miles is the anonymous press of water against rock. You learn the markers by memory. A collapsed guardrail here, a big maple leaning over the shoulder there, a pullover that smells of old fish and late-night cigarettes. It was October 2022 when the first thing happened that I would later call the Hollow Mile. I was returning from a late site visit in Thunder Bay, the kind of week that eats your sense of Wednesday or Thursday. The sky was a machine of low clouds and rain, the kind that makes the highway shine with little veins of reflection. I remember the time because the clock on my dash said 1:07 a.m., and because I have a habit now of remembering the times that hurt me. At mile marker 42, a small dented post with a flaking number, I saw a figure on the shoulder. He was not in the act of waving. He had no flashlight. He did not look lost. He stood like someone who knew the exact angle to learn about the road's temperature. His jacket was dark and sodden. In the beam of my headlights, his eyes looked like hollow pebbles. The way he smiled felt rehearsed, as if whatever had trained him knew exactly the geometry of a smile without teaching him the weather of human mirth. The sensible thing to do would have been to stop and offer help. I did not. Perhaps I was tired. Perhaps the truck behind me beeped impatiently. Perhaps I had the small, cowardly certainty that the less you intersect with strange scenes, the safer you are. I passed him and drove on. 10 minutes later, around Split Rock, he was in my lane. He hadn't stepped into it. He simply occupied it as the pavement rolled beneath him. The muscles in my neck tightened and I braked, the skids singing thin in the rain. For a heartbeat, we looked at each other. He did not move. When he smiled, I felt the wrongness of it like a chill through a sweater. I swerved and accelerated, and when I looked back, there was nothing on the shoulder. The rain had repaired the world as if no man had ever been there. That pattern was small at first. Drifters and oddities on the shoulder are the bread and butter of late-night drives. What made it turn into a story was repetition. I passed mile marker 42 twice more in the week that followed, and each time the same figure appeared. Same coat, same head tilt, same smile. And always, at exactly 1:07 a.m., a call would come through my phone from an unknown number with no area code. A voice I could not place would ask 2 words. Remember marker? And then nothing. When I told my neighbor, a man named Frank who drives logs up and down the route, he shrugged. "You see things," he said, with that line of comfort men use to make other men feel less alone. Then a couple of days later, a trucker in a diner told me, in a voice meant for only me and not for the whole room, that he'd caught a shadow at 42, and his dash cam spat the frame like a burned photograph. People are not always good at listening to the sum of small noises. We piece them into narratives and then prefer one that is clean. For many of us, the clean narrative was late-night exhaustion, misfires of perception, perhaps a local teenager's prank. But then someone didn't come home. Deputy Colin Marsh was an anchor of the county's sheriff department. He had a laugh like a bell, and a badge number he wore with the same stubborn pride as his fishing hat. He had gone out on a routine patrol one wet Friday and failed to return. His cruiser was found idling near the old lumber yard at the edge of the pines. The keys were in the ignition, the light on the dash soft as a candle. There were prints leading from the cruiser toward the woods, large with a crescent-like tread, and then they stopped at the tree line as if someone had been folded away. The official press release said he likely wandered off. Exposure, the report said. The family got private condolences and a burial. People moved on in thoughtful increments. The internet, however, does not move on. A thread developed with grainy images, eyewitness accounts, and a map of markers. The map drew a crooked line that read like a loose poem. Marker 42. Split Rock, a narrow nook by an old service road. Each call that came in, each photo that arrived, threaded the town together in a web of anxious attention. Lena Anders, a good friend and a serious photographer, offered to help me document the place. She had an eye for low light and a collection of thermal rigs and motion cameras that made physics seem less arbitrary. One bitter night in November, we set up 3 cameras at the shoulder near 42, each with separate batteries and staggered angles. We sat in her van with thick blankets and coffee gone cold. At exactly 1:07 a.m., the cameras triggered. One by one, they recorded a thermal presence that moved from the shoulder and then into the lane. The image wasn't clean. It smeared, like oil on water. One frame looked like a human, and the next frame looked like the idea of a human. The audio had a low frequency like an old song played under the lake. Lena and I sat in a near somnolent disbelief, and then we made the rational, necessary call to the sheriff's office. A police investigation began with its usual motions: logs, footage, lab reports, interviews. But the film behaved in a way that made technicians frown and back away. Each attempt to clarify the pixels yielded noise. Extracted frames reversed into indifference. The lab could not produce DNA from any recovered fibers. It was as if whatever had brushed our sensors somehow carried a physics designed to evade our machines. The town grew a ritual around the time 1:07 a.m. Restaurant owners dimmed lights earlier. Fishermen stayed on docks a little later. There were vigils and donated hot meals, and a community forum where people tried to be useful and not hysterical. Then more people went missing. A honeymooner couple disappeared after leaving a small B&B in Grand Marais. A visiting researcher from a college north of the border failed to return from a dusk shoot on the lake. A long-haul driver, slated to pass through Duluth, never logged into the schedule. Each absence left a tidy human vacancy that the family tried to fill with funerals and fruit baskets, and then with questions. I started keeping a ledger, not metaphorically but literally. A small spiral notebook where I wrote times, weather, and small details, prints, camera IDs, names, and a line for the oddities. It felt, in the way that ritual always does, like the only thing I could control. Others kept their own ledgers. Lena had a stack of thermal stills. Frank kept a binder of trucker reports. We were a shabby small-town archive. Then Lena disappeared. Her van was found parked in the pullover one morning with its cameras still running, heaters long gone cold. The footage showed the beam of a floodlight moving along the shoulder, an outline, and then nothing. The last frame before the file corrupted was an odd smear that looked almost like a small handprint on the lens. The town held another vigil that smelled of burning pine and weak coffee. Lena's sister arrived from Minneapolis and brought with her a quiet that could not be negotiated. Pieces of Lena's camera equipment were recovered later by a hunter who stumbled on them in a thick grove. Her notebook, filled with timestamps and careful drawings, was missing. In it, people said there might have been a notation she had scribbled and then scratched out. We never knew. The sheriff's office said they were doing everything they could. That sentence came to mean 2 things. They were constrained by resources, and they were constrained by the world itself. The dreams began after Lena's disappearance. They were not cinematic, they were bureaucratic. A fluorescent room, metal shelves, a stack of small bound books with dates stamped on the spines. A single hand paints neat entries across the page. Names, tide marks, and a small notation that looks like a tick mark. Once, in a dream I can still taste, I leaned close and the page had my name on it with a pen that paused before it made the small mark next to it. I woke up with my palms sweaty and found the edge of a reddened print on the glass of my car's fogged window. There is nothing scientific about this, and yet the pattern became undeniable. Night, marker, dream, print. We tried to keep a record ourselves. A coalition of neighbors and volunteers, fishermen, Lena, a couple of mine friends, started passing time-stamped footage to each other. We would sit in garages and watch the same frames over and over, seeing pixels morph into forms. We tested thermal cameras and motion sensors, and even an old weather balloon camera a friend managed to borrow. Most nights gave us nothing. Once, a camera recorded what looked like a person with a coat, but when investigators ran the image through filters, the figure resolved into an expanse of noise. Speculation has a pernicious way of becoming a plan if people are not careful. A local preacher organized a prayer vigil. A practical group tried to light the shoulder with portable lamps. Someone suggested a roadblock. An internet personality proposed a live stream with 300 viewers to shock the presence into revealing itself. Only one thing seemed true by repetition. The figure, when it was seen, appeared around the same hour and often near that same mile marker. Lena was the bravest person I know about optics. She would sit in silence, waiting for whatever the camera wanted to show her. One night, after the van was found with its cameras rolling, the town folded inward like paper. Sheriff Hargrove kept the investigation close. The case files thickened. The television stations aired the footage, and the internet filled with theories. Packages of sympathy arrived. Flowers, casseroles, bottles with notes. People wanted to believe that systems would sort the problem out. But systems are human, and humans are messy. It is an odd reflex to hunt for meaning by looking at detail. For weeks, I took to carrying a small notebook in my coat. I made notes like a clerk. Time, weather, smells, numbers on passing trucks. The list of absences grew. Lena, Deputy Marsh, honeymooners, the visiting researcher, and others whose faces I've learned to see pinned to the station board. The ledger in my dreams grew with them. One afternoon during a routine walk, I found a small book tucked into a hollow at the base of an old cedar close to the roadside. It was a child's-size ledger, brown, the spine cracked and the pages slightly yellowed. Someone, it seemed, had hidden it carefully. Inside were names, dates, and strange little notations, slashes and small circles beside some names. It felt like a ledger of attendance. On the last page, someone had scrawled in an uneven rush, "Stop looking," and beneath that a time, 1:07. I took the book to the sheriff. He handled it reverently like you would when given a relic of failure, too heavy to be fully processed. "This could be a prop," he said. "It could be someone's joke. It could also be evidence." Neither of us liked the angles. He asked me to keep my distance from the marker, to let the professionals do their work. And I obliged, because he had a gun and a badge, and I had a sweater and caffeine. But I did not stop watching. The ledger lodged like a splinter under my finger. I thought about how people keep lists, a grocer's inventory, a ship's manifest. The mind organizes absence into ledger form, perhaps because accounting is the closest thing we have to meaning. If the world is carving off people like entries, I would at least keep records. Winter compressed the world. The snow hid footprints and gave us false confidence that if something had happened, it was now frozen in place. Yet the pattern continued. New prints in thawed places. A scarf found snagged on a road sign miles away. The press had a field day. Tours canceled. Businesses reported drops in sales. A couple of local teenagers started a night walk and live-streamed for an audience that wanted to witness and thereby contain fear. For a week, it was a small social spectacle. For the families, it was intolerable. Then, on a brittle morning in late February when the lake had the flat, uncompromising look of glass, Sheriff Hargrove called me personally. "Come down," he said. "We found something new." He met me at the station and led me to a low metal locker that had been cleared from evidence. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a jacket like the one I'd seen on the first night, a heavy wool coat, damp, smelling faintly of iron. The cuffs were frayed, and there were traces of something that the lab could not identify. It was Lena's handwriting on a scrap found inside the pocket. The scrap had a single line written across it. "They mark a time." Below it was a small notation, 107. For a moment, my stomach fell into a place that made the room tilt. People are supposed to be discoverable in neat ways. We expect explanations to fit the contours of our justice systems. Instead, we kept finding pieces that refused to settle into a tidy puzzle. That evening, back on my own porch, I did a thing I had promised myself not to do. I drove to marker 42. The air was white with the kind of cold that makes breath a ribbon. I parked in the pullover, and the car stereo clicked like a companion in a gone world. I walked out with a small light and stood by the marker. The shoulder was a pale indentation in the snow. The trees made black fingers above my head. I called out, though I didn't know if anyone would answer any longer, and the sound dissolved into the pines. At exactly 1:07 a.m., my phone chimed, the same unknown number, though mine was supposedly disconnected from long distance at night. And a voice said, clear as if they were standing beside me, "You remembered the marker." It was not a man. The voice sounded like a place, the cold compressing, the wind through a seam. It carried no warmth. I felt something like a tide under my feet, an urge to step toward the woods. The light from the phone threw my shadow long and thin. I took a photo reflexively, more as proof to myself than anything. The image showed the marker, the trees, and I noticed afterward when I checked the screen, a faint smear above the road, like a smudge left by a fingertip on a lens. The next day, Sheriff Hargrove called a press conference. He read from a note like a man reading someone else's sermon. "We will not live in fear. We ask people to be careful at night. We are expanding patrols." He did not look at me when he said it. He looked at the reporters' mics and the cameras and the shift of light between them. That night, my house felt surveilled and fragile at once. Weeks later, a package arrived on my porch. No return address. Inside was a small folded page and a child's pencil. The page bore a single sentence in a quick, uneven hand. "They keep time. They make a list." There was also a tiny tally mark scratched at the corner, as if someone paused before counting. After that, I moved. I sold my house in Duluth and bought a small apartment in the city, a place with windows that didn't look directly toward the lake. I told the realtor I needed a quiet place. I told my wife I was tired of lists. She looked at me like you look at someone when they have stopped being entirely the person you married, and you are deciding how much of that in you must be loved. I have stopped driving at night on the North Shore. When I take a call at 1:07 a.m. now, I don't answer. I don't drive to marker 42. And yet these things are not solved by distance. I still wake sometimes to the sound of a marker being tallied in my dream, to the scratch of a pencil on a page that lists names. I still have the ledger I found tucked in the cedar. It's in a shoebox beneath my bed. At 3 in the morning, I sometimes open it and look at the page with the hurried scrawl, "Stop looking." Sometimes I add a line. There are nights when the ledger feels ridiculous, paper in a storm, yet the small ritual persisted. After the hollow mile, neighbors formed groups to drive at night. Businesses posted reminders to check in, and volunteers set watches. The shared attention mattered. It made the town feel less solitary. I was once asked on a podcast whether I believed the supernatural explanations. My answer has not changed. I cannot prove metaphysics, but I can show patterns. People disappeared at the same hour, near the same marker, and our instruments often failed to hold a clear image. That repetition is the boundary of fact for me. Keeping the ledger taught me humility. Writing times, weather, prints, and odd smells felt like the only useful thing I could do. When others wrote back, "We saw one too," it gave the record context. We collected photos and dashcam clips. Many turned out to be nothing, a trick of light or a prank. A few were honest. Each needed examination. One winter night, I drove to Marker 42 alone. The sky was sharp with stars, and the world under them felt thin. I stood by the post and called out, more to be a witness than in expectation. My phone chimed. An unknown number flashed. The voice that answered said, plainly, "You remembered the marker." It spoke like a device mimicking speech. The line was not a human phone call. It felt like a recorded timing, a check mark. That moment fixed something in me. There was an order to this. Someone or something observed, and the observation had a schedule. If there is a small advantage to understanding pattern, it is that pattern can be tracked. We began to document carefully. Timestamps, multiple camera angles, and community logs. It did not solve the disappearances, but it created a ledger that others could follow. If there is one practical lesson here, it is simple. If you see someone at the shoulder of a lonely road at night, note the exact time and take a time-stamped photo if it is safe. Call emergency services. If possible, do not stop alone. Circle back with another vehicle or wait with others. Share your details with local authorities and community pages. Small facts connect into patterns. For your video, use this engagement prompt at the end. If you were driving past a lonely shoulder at 1:07 a.m. and saw a person standing there, would you stop to help or keep driving? Why? Share a time when you had to make a similar choice. Encourage viewers to include specific times and photos. Those replies build a living ledger. I still keep the original ledger in a shoebox under my bed. Sometimes at night, I open it and run my finger along the entries. The act of writing and reading keeps the memory honest. It is a small defiance against being forgotten. If you have a story, add it. Witnessing is a way to fight the confusion the road tries to impose. Please be careful, and please write down the time you saw them today.